And let's get the ball rolling. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today to chat about marketing for nonfiction authors. And as I was mentioning earlier, we are also going to be covering a lot of stuff that is going to be, of course, applicable to fiction authors as well. But before we get to that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the publishing world and what you're doing nowadays?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I'm so glad. Always great chatting with you. Evan has come on our book launchers channel before and done different webinars and things with us. So always great to connect and be here. And as you guys can tell, I'm not Julie Broad.
I should have mentioned something like that up front, shouldn't I
Yeah.
have? Julie, Julie was unable to make it today, so Sarah from her team stepped in here. So we are very appreciative of Sarah being here, and she works super closely with Julie as well on all sorts of stuff. So
Yeah.
they've got a lot of great experience to share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sarah Bean. I'm the marketing manager for Book Launchers. And for those of you not familiar with Book Launchers, we're a full service self-publishing company where we work with nonfiction authors to write, edit, design, publish, distribute, and market nonfiction books. And so we've worked with about 800 authors since Book Launchers started in 2017. I've been with the team since 2018, so about 7 years now as marketing manager. And so my role is specifically all the things that we're talking about, how nonfiction authors, particularly those that maybe don't come in with a full list or a full platform already. I work with them on how to build that platform, how to monetize it, how to look at how your book fits into a bigger ecosystem when it comes to your author brand, and then all of those strategies to get the book out into the world and match to the right audiences. So that's where I spend my time. I'm a huge publishing nerd. I've been in publishing in some form or another for longer than I want to admit. I want to say 20 plus years at this point. I started my professional career in a major booking agency where I worked directly for the literary department where we sold properties to the big publishers, the traditionals. So, everyone likes to call it the big five. When I started, it was like the big eight. Now it's the big five. Because they've all either merged or gone out of business or changed their models or what have you. So I cut my teeth on selling celebrity memoirs to traditional publishers. And we were some of the first that were actually, this is way back, we're selling blogs and internet properties and turning those into books. This was kind of, we're talking that ICANN has cheeseburger days. Okay. I don't want to date myself too much, but that's some of you know what I'm talking about. I see some smiles. Okay. So from there, after spending about a decade in the publishing world at the agency level, I moved on to work with a New York Times bestselling author and published his book and ran his startup. And so I got to get both sides of the perspective, what it was like to sell a property and also what it was like to develop a book and turn that into a whole platform. But then I was lucky to find a home at Book Launchers, helping our authors build their platform and get their books out there. So I kind of live and breathe publishing.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear, what are some of the things that when you were starting out have not changed? Like what was important years ago and what is still important today when it comes to marketing a nonfiction book or getting the word out about it?
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting because I spent so much time, when I first started in the industry, self-publishing was really in its infancy. It really wasn't a thing. People were doing it, but they weren't doing it well. And so there was a stigma that was attached to what self-publishing was. That's obviously changed in the last, decade, 15 years or so. But the things that have stayed the same is that in order to get attention on your book, whether it was selling your book to a publisher or it was just trying to get attention on a book, people always came back to the marketing of it. It almost didn't matter how good the book was. Publishers wanted to know, what avenues do you have to sell it? They almost didn't care about the topic. They wanted to know, how can you sell your book for us? And I feel like, if anything, that's gotten sharper over the last 20 years because there is so much more out there now. So even publishers, and if anyone here has ever been traditionally published, I'm sure you've probably encountered that the marketing of that book is the most challenging aspect of it because publishers have limited budgets. And so they really want to bring in authors that can market themselves, that have a platform, that have an audience that they want to sell to. So I don't think that's really changed at all. If anything, it's gotten stronger and more. But like I said, the big shift that has happened is all of the avenues that people now have to publish. The gatekeepers don't exist anymore, or they do, but you can get around them more easily than you could 20 years ago. So it's really fun. And I think it's honestly the most exciting time in the publishing industry, probably since, ever.
For those authors that are still considering going the traditional route versus self-publishing route, do you have any advice for them, or some of the pros and cons that you would lean them towards one way versus the other?
Yeah. So really when it comes down to choosing that path, it comes down to your goals. A traditional publisher, the pros are going to be things like access to publishing channels and distribution. You're going to have established markets and people who've been doing it and selling it, for a long time. So you get a little bit more of a lift. When you're self-publishing, you're making those inroads yourself. You're not, depending on a team to do it, unless you work with a company like Book Launchers or with great companies like yours to help get those avenues open. I would say the cons, particularly when it comes to traditional publishing, is that you are giving up creative control. You are letting them license your IP, which means that they are going to make decisions on things like cover or title or even the editorial direction of the book and how they want to market that book. That is solely in their corner. That's why they pay you. On the flip side of it, self-publishing, kind of the cons come with you are upfronting that cost that it takes to produce that book and to market that book, right? You're investing in it. You're doing that up front. The bonus, you keep the IP, the rights, and the royalties. That's the great part about self-publishing, is that all funnels back to you. Some of the cons that come with self-publishing is it can be really difficult to know if you're making the right decisions creatively unless you're working with experts who understand and know the market. So, if you're foregoing it on your own and you're making decisions and then your book isn't selling or your platform's not growing, you want to look at, okay, why are the reasons for that? What do I need to put in place to be able to get in front of those right readers? In order to make those decisions, and I have this conversation all the time, should I go traditional? Should I go self-publish? Again, it's going to come back to goals. If your goal is you want to have your book in brick and mortar stores from the onset and you want to have, perhaps that label of a St. Martin's or a Penguin Random House or what have you, then, yeah, go the traditional publishing route. You're going to be on a longer timeline. Might be 18 months to 2 years before your book hits market. If
That's assuming that it gets picked up and doesn't
exactly
include the time to query
to,
agents and
to
all of that stuff. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, that's a whole process in itself. We used to have books that I would start working with a client and it could be 18 months before we sold their property. And then you tack on another 18 months on top of that for editorial and for distribution. So, it's a long journey. I would say if your goals are to have that creative control and to be able to control how you show up in the marketplace, the sales channels, all of that, then self-publishing is the way to go. You're on a faster timeline. You get to make the creative decisions. And ideally, you're working with a team that's going to help you make smart decisions.
And going back to what we were talking about previously, is that a lot of the marketing, regardless of whether or not you are self-published or traditionally published, a lot of that marketing is still going to fall on your shoulders. You might get expanded reach with traditional publishing just from being able to get into bookstores easier, but that, that's going to vary in quite wildly in terms of how much help that's actually really doing you. Um,
100%.
so there's still that aspect, which, so regardless of which route you go, the marketing stuff we're going to be talking about is going to be important either way. So
Yeah.
going on to marketing, what are the main channels or ways that you recommend that nonfiction authors market their books?
Ooh, and there's so many options that are out there. It can be really, really overwhelming. Like, just, right, which direction do I turn? Do I do this? Do I do that? Do I do that? I say first off that in order to market the book, you need to realize that the book is usually not the end goal. It's usually not the end product. It's usually one rung on a much longer ladder, which is going to be your entire platform. And nowadays, especially, readers or buyers are really looking for authors that they can connect to. They want content that they can connect with. And so, once the book is out, what are the rest of the things that you can do that can be propping that book up and that can take the form of email marketing, creating your newsletter, looking at the content you're putting out online? It could be speaking, it could be courses, workshops, partnerships. There are a lot of different aspects, but all of it creates a holistic picture of what your author brand is. So I encourage anyone who's kind of looking at marketing the book to understand that the book is one piece. What are the pieces that you're putting in place around it that are going to really lead to growth and reaching readers? Does
And
that
I
make
think
sense?
part of that is distinguishing also what parts are sort of more leaning towards marketing and what parts
Mhm.
are leaning towards building that platform where you can monetize multiple things as well, right? Because
Yeah.
you might be doing partnerships with other people, and you might be selling, help, cross-selling a class or coaching or something with that partner. And that is sort of both a form of marketing, but also monetizing your platform as well. And I'll say during this chat, anyone is also welcome to drop any questions that they
Mhm.
have in the Q&A. I noticed someone mentioned earlier that they had quite a few people on their mailing list as well. And since we've been talking about mailing lists, they had a
Yeah.
lot of freebie seekers, people who join their mailing list, but they are not opening and clicking on their newsletters. And that's, building a mailing list is a great way to connect with your audience. So first, before we get into all of that, for the people that don't have a mailing list at all and have zero subscribers, why would someone want to start a mailing list, and what are some of the benefits?
I think building that relationship with your reader is the first step, right? If your only access to your reader is potentially through the book, they read your content, but then what's next for them? How do you build that relationship? I mean, I have yet to meet a nonfiction author who has written their book because they don't want to help someone or educate someone, right? And this is talking about the 800 authors that have come through here, and virtually the through line is always, I'm writing my book to help. Depending on whatever that ideal reader is, they want to help and get their message out. So how do you do that beyond just the education in your book? Usually it's going to be when you're building an email marketing list, and then you're able to nurture the relationship. You're able to engage more with them. You're able to get more of that buy-in. And if that small connection can lead to helping someone, then you've achieved what you set out to do. I would say building an email marketing list. This is a top priority that I think that should be for a lot of authors, and a lot of authors have a hard time kind of wrapping their mind around what would I say on a regular basis? Why would anyone sign up for my email marketing list? But they have no problem posting on LinkedIn, right? Because that's an open forum. They have no problem posting on social media because everybody's posting there. But I encourage you to remember that you don't own your social media followers or your platform. That is owned by Meta or by, X or whomever else. So if at any one time, and this has happened, in fact, there's probably people here that this has happened to. If at any one time you cross some arbitrary social media rule that you didn't know existed and they ban you, then you have no connection point with your audience. So your email marketing list becomes something that you own and cultivate. It becomes a place where you can test out material, you can engage further, you can evoke discussion and that with your readers that you really don't get the opportunity to do just through social media alone.
Yeah,
So,
and owning that relationship with your reader is so valuable,
mhm.
because like you said, if you get banned or whatever, then you can't make any more posts there. And it might not even that you get banned. It might just be that the algorithm for sorting,
Right.
changes. And so for whatever reason, your content is not surfacing to your subscribers anymore, right? It used to
Exactly.
be, all of the posts on timelines where it was just chronological. If you happen to post at the same time that someone else is on, then they would see your post just because you made it at that time. And now it's all engagement driven, where it's like, how many comments or likes have you gotten on this post? Then we'll show it to more people. And so, it used to be that your posts were seen by much more of your audience, and now it's maybe 1 to 3%, if you're
Mhm.
lucky, of your posts will get shown to people who are following your social media page ostensibly so that they can see your content in their feed, which just ends up not happening. So,
Right. And I want to make one other point here. This is something that I talk to my authors about. There's a lot of stats that back this up, and if I'm going to try and remember this accurately, but there is some there's a statistic that the number of people who buy a book or a product or a course or whatever through social media, it's as low as 12%, right? So if you're putting out your content and using that as your avenue to funnel sales, there, yeah, I think the stat from Opt-in Monster, if I remember correctly, it's like 12% of people have said, yeah, I'll buy something because I see a buy button on a social media profile. In contrast, 78% of people have said that they have purchased something through an email marketing list. So that kind of tells you right there that if someone is on your email marketing list, they're actively engaged and wanting to know what you're talking about. They want to know what your products are. Whereas then if they only see it on social media, they see it while they see 50 other ads, tons of competing content, and you're lucky if it even shows up in the algorithm, right? So I would say for sales alone, an email marketing list is going to be a better bet. You have a captive audience where you can put out things like new offers, offer sales, offer things that you may not get that attention on social media.
so someone emailed me a question before the Q&A, saying this was one of the things that they wanted to cover, was how do you do that without sounding too salesy in your emails? Like, how do you do
Yeah.
how do you send emails that just don't sound too pushy, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's a great question. I think there's a couple of avenues that you want to take here. Number one, you want to focus always on the benefit for the reader. You always know, someone knows when they're being sold to. People know when they're being sold to. And I don't know if you're anything like me, I automatically shut down. Right? I'm just like, yep, nope. I know automatically I don't need what you're trying to tell me right now. But if you lead with the benefit and what the goal of that is, why are we selling it like this? Why is it something that's going to help you? It automatically is going to register on a personal level. Case in point, I have a 4-year-old. We are going through the worst sleep regression right now. Like it is just, I'm up 2 hours every night. He's climbing in my bed at 2 in the morning. I mean, it's just parents out there, you know what I'm talking about. Friend of mine sent me an email list and was like, here's the email. And it literally, as I'm reading through it, is like, does your child do this? Do they do this? Do they do this? It read like my personal diary. I was like, yes, every single one of those problems, I'm dealing with it. By the time I got to that bottom of that page, I was like, where do I sign? So I want you to focus on the benefit and why that product or whatever it is that you're selling, whether it's your book, a course, or some other aspect, can really help people. The other thing that I do encourage you to is don't just put out sales information. Whether it's your email marketing list or your social media messaging, mix it up. People are following you because they want to be educated, they want to be entertained. There's something about you and your story that resonates with them. So if you do sale after sale after sale after sale, and that's all you're putting out in email content, yeah, they're going to shut down. But if you're incorporating that into an overall brand, education, entertainment, pulling clips from your book and your other content, and really building a well-rounded picture of who you are and why you're doing what you do, you're going to get a better reaction. You're going to get more clicks. You're going to get more people that are engaged and listening.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I sort of break down every newsletter into two distinct parts. Um one is building rapport. So this
mhm.
is this is the part of your newsletter where you might just have a little vignette, a little story of something that happened to you this past week. Doesn't need to be anything crazy. Doesn't need to be that you went on a roller coaster and it got stuck for 3 hours and whatever. Like, it can be simple, like you walked your dog, or you went to the park, or like you grilled something. Doesn't need to be some crazy story, just something that shows that you're human and allows you to connect with other people and they can say, "Hey, I have that same grill too," or "Hey, I was just at the park as well," or
And that super cute picture you put out of your kids this week.
yeah, exactly.
It was a really
Yeah.
cute picture.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't have kids, dogs are great too.
Plants are great. Show me
Plants
your
are great.
monstera. Come
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, so those are all good ways to connect with your audience. Now, if you send out a newsletter every week that just is, here's a picture of my kids or my plants or my dog, people are going to unsubscribe because again, in the same way that people don't only want to be sold to, they're interested in the human aspect too, but that's not really what they are showing up for. And so the second part of your email is really about providing them with value, right? So like
Yes.
you were saying, Sarah, give them that educational piece to some of your content, and you can use that as a lead in to getting them to want to read more, right? Like,
Hmm.
we cover these three parts in my book, and here's the first part and all the detail about that. And if you want, read more, check out the full book with all the details.
Hmm.
That kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's really about providing value. For me personally, is um I'm thinking about my own newsletter. A lot of times my newsletters will be about these Q&As that I'm setting up. If I've updated Story Origin, if I've released new features or changed the software up a bit, I'll talk about how I've released those updates and how those can be helpful to the authors that are using those features. And so that's how I'm providing value, like a reason for you to open and click, because that's
Yeah.
that's something that someone was asking about. And do you have anything to add to that, Sarah?
Yeah, the value aspect of it is so valuable. You as an author and as the subject matter expert have access to information that that reader potentially doesn't. So it's a matter of wanting to help them solve that problem, figure out what that next step is, right? Like we always talk about how a book should solve a problem for your reader. Well, once they solve that problem, what's next? A good way to put this is, if you have a book about budgeting and money management, and the issue is to help people build up their savings, and then once they build up their savings, then what is the next step? That they need to invest, or that they need to spend it on a car, or they need to do whatever it is to do. So there is always a logical journey for your reader. So your newsletter and your content in general can help address those things. Your book helps solve that problem. What's next for the reader? That is the content that's going to keep them coming back. So, yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. So we know we have how we're going to send our newsletters out. We know what we're going to put in them, and we'll have content for them. But how do we even get people to join our newsletter in the first place? Like, why
Right.
why would they sign up to our
Yeah.
newsletter? How
Yeah.
do we find these people, and where are they?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And the first thing that I usually recommend, and I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard this, is do you have a lead magnet or some kind of reader magnet on your website? That reader magnet is a value benefit for the reader. It's a value add. It's something free. It's something that they can use. And I like to put it in terms of, would they ordinarily have paid for this information elsewhere?
What
Um,
is a reader magnet?
So that's a great question. Sorry for anyone that if I wasn't clear on that. A reader magnet is usually a free downloadable resource on a website where someone is giving you their email address in exchange for that information. It can take a lot of different forms. It should fit in line with your brand and your book. The checklists, templates, spreadsheets, budgets. I've seen so many things over the years. I had someone during COVID, their reader magnet was like really cool Zoom backgrounds, sign up and you got some cool Zoom backgrounds you wouldn't get otherwise. It's usually going to be something that's in line with your content. So going back to that personal finance book example I was using, maybe it's an example budget, or, a downloadable template for something like that. Or I had a client a few years ago. He was a big commercial real estate guy, and the downloadable resource was access to a directory of, tons and tons of properties that were up for purchase, right? Normally people would pay a few $100s to get that, but if they joined his email marketing list, they were going to get that resource for free. I have a lot of authors who use a workbook or some kind of companion sheet to the book as their reader magnet. So it can take a lot of different forms. I encourage you to play around with it a little bit. Just because you choose one doesn't mean that's the end all be all of reader magnets. In fact, creating new reader magnets or lead magnets can be part of your overall marketing strategy. Maybe you have one leading into the book launch, and then after the book launches, maybe you release another one halfway through the year that is sort of that next step that we were talking about. So I do encourage you to try different ones. When it comes to getting people to join your mailing list, I like to think about it as you're sort of breadcrumbing people back to your website. So if you're putting out information on social media, people encounter it, and you never know who's encountering it there. You want to have that lead magnet front and center, easy to follow to come back to your website. That should always sort of be the call to action. Join the mailing list. That's going to be more valuable to you than almost anything else. So always sort of breadcrumbing people back. I get a lot of people that ask me, should I run Facebook ads? Should I run Facebook ads on my book? I actually don't prefer to run Facebook ads on the book. Unless that book's on sale, it's not really going to register for people. However, a free resource on how to get your 4-year-old to go to sleep, that I'm going to click on. So running Facebook ads specifically to your target reader is going to be something that will help there. There's also really simple ways you can do this right within your book. Add a call to action page at the end of your book. People, they finish the book, and then on that last page, it's, hey, thanks for reading. I hope you got a lot out of it. Leave a review, download this resource. I have a lot of authors who will embed links into their book that takes them back to a resource page where they can download it. I would say another really great way to get people to join the mailing list, if you are doing podcast interviews, instead of directing people to buy your book, direct them back to your mailing list. Have one very simple URL. It could be your website, sarahbean.com/resource. I made that up. I don't have a website. Don't go to that URL. That's not real. but I'm just saying, have one very simple URL that you can use when you're doing media, podcast interviews, anywhere where someone is going to be posting your information, say in like show notes. If you want to learn more about Sarah, go to sarahbean.com/resources. Have it be super simple. Don't make them have to search for that lead magnet. It should be right there front and center when they land on your website. And even if you're using that, resource URL, a landing page, it should make that lead magnet should be front and center. Put your email, get this resource, and then you can engage with them further.
Yeah, that is a great idea. And especially for any authors that are considering, that do social media as well. I mean, as much as we said, social media is hard to own your audience or anything like that. It is still a good discoverability mechanism as well, though, right? So
Absolutely.
if you are
Absolutely.
posting on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube or TikTok or
Wherever.
wherever else, there are so many people that have channels, but then they don't have any way to ultimately get those people onto a platform that they own, like onto their email list, right? And
Right.
so if they have a YouTube channel and they're not directing people to join their mailing list and say, hey, also, if you like this video and you want to learn more, go check out these other free resources I have in the description, right? So anything that you're doing where new people might be discovering you, have that link to your reader magnet there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great thing to offer as a free gift to an audience. Also great if you're doing like partnerships, guest spot on other people's platforms, social media lives, writing guest articles, anything like that. That is an absolutely great opportunity to promote a lead magnet, which is going to be sometimes it's the introduction to your content for a reader. But if they like it, then they can get into your email list. They can learn more. You have the opportunity to sell to them. You have the opportunity to build a brand ambassador based on the value you're providing.
And that's the other thing with, for example, like running Facebook ads is
Mhm.
that if you run Facebook ads to a paid book and they go and they buy that book, when you release your next book, you have to go back to the well and start running Facebook ads for that book too. If you
Yep.
run Facebook ads for a lead magnet and people sign up to your mailing list, well, now you have that direct point of contact with them. You don't need to go back to the well every time you release a new book and pay for more ads because you can
Yeah.
just email your list and say, "Hey, I just released a new book," and all of those people that were interested and had signed up to your mailing list through your lead magnet,
Yeah.
there they are.
Yeah, absolutely. They always say the best way to sell one book is to write another.
Absolutely, absolutely helpful. It does provide that lift usually with your other books too. Someone had asked in the chat as well, how do you educate and entertain for fiction? I mean, we're talking about nonfiction mostly, but I think that this question I think applies to the stuff that we've been talking about for
Yeah.
nonfiction as well. As like, how do you educate and entertain an audience?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think I can address the fiction aspect of it, even though I work in nonfiction. I'm an avid fiction reader. And my favorite newsletters are usually ones where, I mean, I get the occasional ones where an author is like, here's my tour stops, here's my new release dates, and they're not, doing a ton with it. That's fine. I like certain ones where they are giving me bonus content, right? So it could be bonus chapters, different points of view from characters, interesting tidbits about the plot. Um, and I think there is a really great tie-in with fiction into reaching new readers through the nonfiction elements of it, right? So if your book takes place in Chicago and there's certain landmarks there that are featured in your book, you can be writing about those and the history about it and why it inspired you. Usually, fiction readers are wanting to know the story behind the story. They want to know why this was your plot choice or why you chose this aspect of it. So, giving them that behind the scenes information is always fabulous. And, if you're a romantasy reader, you know how rabid fans get when someone releases a new point of view or even just a bonus chapter. It's like, so there's a well of stuff that you can do on the fiction level. On the nonfiction level, and I hope you don't mind, Evan. I saw this question in the chat. I'm
Yeah,
just going to kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
address it.
No,
Someone
go
had
for it.
asked about
Absolutely.
how marketing is different between fiction and nonfiction. I think it really comes down to reader habits and intent. People buy nonfiction books to solve a problem. They want to solve a problem in their own life. There's something they're curious about, something they want to learn about. Even those who read memoirs or biographies are reading them because they're curious. They want to answer a question. And so your marketing can address that and should address that. It should look at why they want to know about this, what problem they're trying to solve, and what solutions you provide. Fiction marketing, fiction readers read fiction for a different reason. They usually are reading fiction for some kind of escapism, for entertainment, for something that is, a window out of their existing world. Whereas in nonfiction, plants them very firmly in the existing world. So the marketing really comes down to reader intent. And if you're writing fiction, like I talked about, things like sample chapters, behind the scenes where you got your inspiration for the story, that adds to the escapism. On the nonfiction side, if you're solving a problem, you want to be able to address and support that reader through that journey. So there are two avenues here, and I encourage you when you are designing your marketing to consider, why is my reader picking this book up? What is it doing for them? And how can I support them through that?
And I think even one of the things that you mentioned, a lot of fiction readers being interested in the sort of story behind the story, I think
Mm-hmm.
is can be applicable in a lot of nonfiction authors' cases as well. Like, what is the
Oh,
story
yeah.
behind the story of like how did you solve this problem for yourself when you were
Yeah.
getting started, right? And so it's not
Right.
just the advice and recommendations that you have in the book, but a little bit of your journey as well. And
Right.
then, how did you come to solve that problem?
Yeah.
And that can provide a good tie-in or lead-in to them, to your book or whatever other ways that you are monetizing your platform. And I think that's a good topic to sort of jump into next is, we're talking about writing books, but when it comes to nonfiction, you have also so many other avenues of monetizing your platform, to put it as succinctly as possible, right? Because it can
Right.
be so many different things.
Right.
So what recommendations do you have in those regards?
In how to monetize your platform.
Yeah, or the various ways or how you might tie that into marketing your book as well as a transition too.
Yeah, I mean, I think your book really becomes just long form source content for a number of other things that you can be doing. You know, we hear about this thing like multiple revenue streams. Like the sales of the book is usually just one small aspect of the overall picture. So that book can be source material for a course, an online course, or it could be source material for a bigger workshop that you're doing for organizations. It can be content that you're turning into social media content, the breadcrumb people back to your email list to bring them into your ecosystem. You know, you can use that book as a lot of times it's that credibility builder, right? It's what's establishing you as a thought leader and establishing you as an expert in your field. So you can use that as a stepping stone into speaking engagements, into partnerships, into consulting engagements, and that's what I see most authors aiming for, and a lot of them really accomplishing it because they've set up the infrastructure to do so. This is a pretty good example. So an author of ours, and you may have heard this story. An author of ours, his book came out in August 2024. He was a CEO who was writing a book about his take on leadership and, how gratitude comes into it and how we need to treat people. And the book launched fairly well, but he spent a lot of time on his website and the social media structure and the web, in building his email marketing list. And he wanted to use it to get on stages and do a few other things. So he put the pieces in place. The book was selling okay. It was doing well, but he kept at it. He kept putting out the feelers. He kept talking to the right people. Well, I think it was February of this year, someone filmed him at a Barnes and Noble signing. He was just out there again, trying to get his name out there. The signing was relatively small. I think he sold 12 books. But he was just filled with gratitude because he's like, I got someone signed up for my email list. I sold 12 books. It was a successful day. Well, someone put that video on TikTok and it went hyper viral. 100 million views. 100 million views because a woman filmed him sitting by himself at a table and the internet rallied around him. Well, what that turned into was because he had the infrastructure in place, people flocked to his email list. They started buying a lot of copies. He was, number one bestseller in multiple categories for weeks. It opened all of the doors that the book was supposed to. So now he has speaking engagements coming into him. He has incoming offers, consulting gigs, all of these things, but he had the infrastructure in place already to cultivate all of that. If he had just released the book and then put none of those other pieces in place, it would have gone nowhere. It would have died on the vine. Now he has a major deal that he can't give us details on yet because it's so secret. He has consulting gigs through 2026. All of these things were put into place because he looked at his book not just as the book, but as part of a bigger picture that he was able to then monetize in all of these new ways. So now your book may or may not go hyper viral, but I think the lesson to take away from it is that if you don't put the infrastructure in place to turn it into multiple streams, you're not going to go anywhere with it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I mean, having that infrastructure in place, I mean, it could have been such a missed opportunity for that
Oh,
if he had gotten all that awareness and didn't have a website or didn't
yeah.
have any other
It was so
means
great
of,
because he called me the day after it had happened. The day after he was like, "Were you on TikTok this weekend?" And I was like, "No, I wasn't." But he told me what had happened, and he was like, "If I hadn't had my email funnel and the lead mag that you had put together, if I hadn't had my social media content out there that people were able to then follow and start, engaging with, this would have gone nowhere." So he was just so grateful for the opportunity, but so glad that he had done the work ahead of time so that when the floodgates opened, he was ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do think it is so valuable, especially with the like having a lead magnet, because again, if you are doing any sort of marketing on social media like TikTok or whatever, a lot of interest just evaporates so quickly
Yeah,
if people don't have a way to connect with you sooner rather than later.
right.
When it comes to getting all of that ahead, what do you recommend that authors have in place for a book launch? Like,
Mm.
because this ties in so well to like having sort of, your platform in place for potentially, when you're getting a lot of interest on social media or elsewhere. What are the things that you think that an author should do to prepare a book launch?
I mean, great question. I mean, flat out, the first thing I'm going to say is an up-to-date author website and up-to-date author social media. Number one, because if you do not have those things in place that sort of establish who you are in the marketplace and what you stand for, let's say media, you start pitching for media or you have someone pitching media on your behalf. If you don't have those things in place, media does not want to talk to you. They don't believe you are that expert. And so the first thing that I work with all of our authors on is getting a really solid author website that showcases all of the things that you have. If you're wanting to speak, if you're consulting, if you are offering courses or masterminds or whatever it is that you're offering, it should all be there, very easily accessible on a website. The lead magnet in the email sequence, or at least the infrastructure for an ongoing email marketing newsletter should be in place prior to launch. Even if you have 2 people on that list to start, everyone starts their email list somewhere. No one starts with 5,000 contacts unless you have bought those contacts, which means they're not qualified leads. So I would say don't worry about the size. People will come as you engage and put more and more of your platform out there. Now, when it comes to what you should have in place before your launch, the biggest things that I encourage you to have very crystal clear understanding of is what are your goals for that book? Why did you write it? Did you write it for sales? Did you write it to use it to get on stages? Did you write it to, be a lead generator for the rest of your funnel? Because that is going to dictate what marketing choices you make. If you don't care too much about one-on-one sales and you're not selling, your book's up on Amazon, but doesn't really matter because you're using it to get clients, then you're probably going to want to engage more in partnerships for marketing than you would, driving a lot of traffic to Amazon. If you're trying to get high sales numbers and just get the book into as many hands as possible, you might engage tools like ebook sales and book giveaways and, be giving the book away for that reason. So in order to decide what launch strategy to take, you need to be crystal clear on why you did this in the first place. That will help you make the best decision for marketing.
And I think that that is a really key point because if if the book is just a stepping stone on the path to, for example, like a consulting engagement, which might be, $10,000 or something, just blowing a number out of thin air,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
The ways in which you market it are going to be a lot different from marketing if the book is the end product, which is, a $5 or maybe $10 ebook, right? Because, for example, going back to talking about like running Facebook ads, typically you bid for impressions when you are doing advertising across any of these
Right.
platforms, whether you're talking about Facebook or Instagram or any other social media platform.
Yeah.
You're bidding for those impressions, and typically prices rise over time, right? And so
Yeah.
um, it has gotten very expensive to bid for certain sets of eyeballs depending on like what topics you are trying
Hmm.
what you are trying to market, right?
Yeah.
And so you might find that you are paying, uh $10 for someone to buy a $10 book, right? Or you
Yeah.
might be paying $10 for each, to advertise to 1,000 set of people, and only one of which might actually sign up to your mailing list, right? And so you
Right.
you pay $10, 1,000 people see it, one person signs up, so you paid $10 for that one sign up essentially, right?
Mm.
Now, they might have signed up to your mailing list, and so you made no money from that. But if that leads to ultimately that $10,000, consulting gig, then that becomes a viable marketing strategy, right? Whereas
Absolutely.
whereas if the end product is only that $5 or $10 ebook, you're on a treadmill the whole time,
Mhm.
right? Because you're spending as much as you're making from, advertising a $10 book for, and you're paying $10 to acquire that customer. You're never going to get anywhere from that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what your ultimate goals are for that book is going to inform a lot of how you can advertise it and what will make sense. from a monetary perspective as well.
Yeah. And I think this really differs. This is another indicator of the difference between fiction and nonfiction marketing. Fiction, your goal is usually the same, to sell as many copies as possible because you're telling a story. There are definitely authors out there who have built an ecosystem around their fiction books, but it's not the same. In nonfiction, you have that ability for all these auxiliary products, right? Worksheets and companion products and courses and speaking engagements and things that are all around the topic. Whereas in fiction, you're usually just trying to sell. So your strategies are going to be a little bit different. Going back to what you're saying about, if that book helps you get a consulting gig, we had an author a number of years ago, Martin Holland, who his book was on the benefits of bookkeeping for small business owners, right? Doesn't sound like a great topic, but it was, why if a business owner doesn't understand their bookkeeping, they're leaving money on the table and they're potentially making, disastrous decisions when it comes to their business. He had a great title. It was They Say I Make Money, so why don't I have any? So the book was out and it was doing okay. It wasn't selling, it wasn't flying off the shelves, but he was selling, 50 or so a month or something like that. But one of the people who heard him on a podcast bought the book, then approached him with a 7-figure consulting contract. Okay. He solved a problem from that reader, and that a reader immediately came back and said, I want you, as the author of this book that helped me so much, help me reshape my business. He got a 7-figure consulting contract. Not only did that cover his cost of producing his book, but it covered his cost if he wanted to sell any books in the future. So that was a major success for him. It wasn't the sales numbers of the book. It was the opportunities that the book were going to be able to afford him afterwards. So when it comes to marketing and deciding, okay, which strategy should I take? How are you going to use that book? Are you using it to build your email list? Are you using it to sell other products? Or are you using it because you want to get it into as many hands as possible? That becomes easier depending on the topic, right? Not every book is for every person, regardless of what people tell me. I cannot tell you how many times I hear, I want to write a memoir because I want to help people. Well, your memoir may help people, but it's not going to help every single person. So you have to define who you're helping and why, and how you're going to use that book. Getting back to the, I want to help as many people as possible, so I want to get, as many sales as possible. The more general your topic, broad level personal finance, maybe broad level parenting, broad level memoir, maybe those are a little bit easier. But I will say that it's actually easier to sell and to market a niche book, a very niche book with a very specific audience that helps solve a very specific problem. It's easier to market them because those people automatically know that book is for me. I'm going to get it because it's solving that actual problem that I have.
And if you want to do more around a topic, you can always make that the second book or the third book, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, you start a chain. Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. One of the things that you mentioned in passing, having set up before you launch as well, was not only the email list, but also sort of the ongoing or the automatic recurring campaign. So
Mm-hmm.
the automation and welcome sequence that you have with the mailing
Yeah.
list. Tell us a little bit about that and what you recommend authors have set up for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really important that if someone gives you their email address, right, they're trusting you with their information. So you want to automatically set up a thank you for that, right? So you should, within whatever email marketing program you're using, whether it's Kit, MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, or any of the dozens others, you should set up an automatic email back that's thanking them for joining the list, giving them a little preview of what's to come, and then delivering that value add, that lead magnet. What I like to do after that is usually that second email is going to be a little bit of a deeper dive into who you are and what they're going to learn from you. But that is also your opportunity to promote the book. I like to use that second email as an introduction of, hey, if this lead magnet helped you out, I dive deeper into it in my book. Please check out the book. Here's what you're going to get from it. Here's the links, and make it very easy for them to be able to access it. That third email, I like to use as a little bit of a check-in. Hey, what'd you think of that lead magnet? Open the door to conversation. I also like to use that as a value add. Here's my videos on this. Here's my extra resources. If you're looking for more information, here's the places to go. Some people do sequences as long as 5. I've known someone that set up 10 email. I think that's a little overkill, but I say 3 to 5 is a pretty good sweet spot. And it's just an opportunity to build a relationship. Let them in a little bit. Give them your origin story. Why are you doing this? Why is this your big mission? Why are you trying to help people? Because it's the stories and the human aspect that really make people connect with you. So in this day of sales at every corner and AI content and all of these different things that are out there, it's the human factor that really drives connection and relationship building. So don't be afraid to give them that story and let them know who you are, why you're doing this, because I think you're going to see you're opening the door up to some really interesting and engaging conversations.
And I think that going on from that, if you do things like you ask them questions in your welcome sequence, that doesn't only show them that like you're a human, but it also shows them that you are open to engaging with them and building relationships with your audience, right? If you in your welcome sequence talk about your story with, how how you learned to finally get your finances under control or something from your memoir. Um, and then you ask them, where are you at, you know, with this? That opens the door to engaging with them. And
Yeah.
then you start to build real relationships with your audience, and those people will turn into customers or reviewers or beta readers, and they will just be willing to, they'll be much more on board about helping you out in your endeavor because they have a real relationship with you
Yeah.
at that point. And the other thing that I will note there is like if you can make the question really, really simple too, it's not always possible, but it is another good thing that you can do is just make it really low effort for them to reply. And then you can
Right.
always engage them in a deeper conversation too. So you might not ask them like, where are you at in your process with, financial planning, right? That's a very open-ended question, very difficult to answer, especially when the person answering might be like, I don't even know if this person's gonna read my response, right? So for your audience, if you ask them something maybe simpler like do you have do you have over $10,000 in savings or something, maybe that's getting
Yeah.
too personal for people, but like the point being it's like a yes or no question, right? Or it
Yeah.
might be a which do you prefer this or do you prefer that, right? And those sorts of questions make it really simple for your audience to respond to, and then you can start to engage them in a deeper conversation too.
One question I like to put out is what strategy have you tried to solve whatever problem that didn't work for you? Okay,
Yeah.
so, something like that. A lot of times when we're talking to our authors, it could be, what did you try for marketing that didn't work and what are you really hoping will happen next, right? Because
And
that
people
it's
love to
people love
complain,
that.
so
Yeah, right. Yeah. People love
who
to tell
doesn't like
you.
to complain?
They love to tell you what's
Yeah,
gone wrong.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So something like, if they landed on your page because you're solving a problem for them, that probably means that they've tried other things that haven't worked. So what are some of the things that they've tried that haven't worked that maybe you can help them with? And I would also, going back to what we were talking about earlier, how not to make the language salesy. When you ask those kind of questions that show that you're interested in their particular journey, that takes you out of, seller and buyer or author and reader and puts you in a partnership with that person. Hey, I'm interested in you. I'm interested in what you've tried that hasn't worked. I'm interested in what brought you here, how you discovered me in this huge wide world. So let's talk about it and let's, get engaged.
Yeah. And yeah, so for that email sequence, like a 3 to 5 email sequence is good. It depends. I think I have now 20 emails in my
Ah,
welcome
you're one of
sequence. So
those.
I had 5 emails in my welcome sequence for years. But the difference is with Story Origin, it has so many different features now
Right.
that I
Yeah.
really was just not able to cover the breadth of what you can do with it in like a couple of emails. So
And that
I
makes total
really
sense.
extended it
Yeah.
out. So if you have, multiple books in a series, if you've got 3 or 4 books or 5 books, if you had 2 emails in your welcome sequence for each book that you've published, like I don't think it would be wild to have, eight emails in your welcome sequence if you've got 4 books, or,
No,
if you've published 20 books, like, you might have a ton. So, but
I would always say too, it's trial and error, right?
right.
Just because you start with two or three, maybe you build and you see better engagement when you have more. Or maybe you've got too many and you're not seeing people complete the sequence. So therefore, maybe you need to cut it back. There is no rule of thumb in the perfect way to do it. It comes down to who your reader is, what their habits are. And then I suggest that you try things, give it some time. Don't do 5 emails and then go, oh, well, it's not working. So I'm going to, stop everything in a week. You've got to give things time to settle and kind of get some data on how it's performing before you make changes. But, always go back to, what am I getting back from this? Am I getting more engagement? Am I getting more messages coming to me? Are people clicking all the way through? If they're not, what little thing can I tweak at first? See if that makes an impact, give that some time. So I do encourage you not to think of marketing as like an overnight success. It's something that you need to build over time and determine what works best for you.
Absolutely. And I would also say, don't let other people's journeys to where they are now, mean you have to have all of those
Yeah.
things in place too, because we've talked about a lot of stuff, whether it's YouTube or TikTok, or, having 5 emails in a welcome sequence. The thing I like to always remind authors is, like, don't let these recommendations become roadblocks, right? If you talk to an author who is much farther along in their journey and they tell you, oh, I have channels set up on these different platforms. I have 10 emails in my welcome sequence. I have, 3,000 subscribers on my mailing list or whatever. You don't, if you ask that person what they had on day one, guarantee they did not have all of those things on day one, right? So you don't necessarily need to have 5 emails in a welcome sequence. Just start with just at least one that says, "Hey, thanks for joining my mailing list, and here's
Yeah.
here's that free resource," or what have you. And you can always level these things up as time goes on. Just like,
Yeah.
for years I had, just a handful of emails in my welcome sequence, and it was only last year that I, really really buffed it up and added a ton more over
Because Story
everything.
Origins
Yeah.
grown
Yeah,
and
yeah,
has
yeah.
added all these cool things
Yeah.
that it makes total sense. I mean, what an incredible resource for authors. You need to be able to educate them right. So yeah, I can absolutely see why it grew.
Absolutely. We are a little bit past the hour here. I want to be mindful of people's time. Sarah, again, give us that little bit about book launchers, and then how we can get in contact with you guys if anyone else has any follow-up questions that we didn't, we had a ton of questions that came up in the chat, and I don't think that we were able to get to all of them. So if
Yeah.
people had wanted to follow up with you guys, how would they do that, and give us a little bit more about book launchers again?
Absolutely. So, check us out at booklaunchers.com. We're a full service self publishing book service. We help authors through every step of that journey. For authors that have already had their book come out and you're looking for a little bit of that extra marketing support, I encourage you check out booklaunchers.com/author launch kit, which is our AI marketing software. I like to call it, you're getting me in AI form, but in reality, you're actually getting Julie Broad in AI form. And it is our new marketing software where authors who either are coming up on launch or have already launched their books can go and use this fantastic software that's going to give you everything you need in terms of social media, lead magnets, video ideas, media lists. I mean, everything that you need to set up that launch. And then lastly, I'm breaking my own rule here. I normally say go to one URL, but I'm breaking my own rule. We also have our communities. So we have communities of nonfiction authors. They're hosted on the school platform, and we do weekly trainings. We do open forums, Q&As. We also have, I think there's some 200 people that are in there now. And if you're looking for that other little bit of support and to connect with other nonfiction authors, hey, this is something I've tried, it's not working. Hey, I need some support. What do I do here? This is a fantastic forum for that. So that's called our, and I'm going to put it in the chat, Author Business Accelerator and Author Launch Kit. And I'm sorry, I don't have my URLs right in front of me, which is just poor marketing on my behalf. But you can also reach out just at booklaunchers.com. You can send me a note at sarah@booklaunchers.com. Happy to chat with you through any of these pieces. And if there's anything I can help with or answer any of your questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I always love meeting authors.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming to get today and chatting
Yeah.
with us, Sarah.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me be Julie 2.0. Julie, I don't know what you want to call me, but I appreciate it. And, hopefully wishing you all the best as you market your books. And if there's anything I can help you with, I'd love to hear from you.
Thanks everyone for coming out and chatting with us today as well. And we will see you all in the next one.